Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Taking Action in 2020. My name is Yawna Allen, and I'm a citizen of the Quapaw Nation and a descendant of the Cherokee Nation and Yuchi peoples. I'm also the Director of Civic Engagement and Special Projects with the National Congress of American Indians. And I'm excited you could join us today as we look to celebrate National Voter Registration Day, which is today, September 22nd. We'd like to start today's live stream, however, with a song on the hand drum performed by Powma Williams, a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, and she serves as Junior Miss Nevada Urban Indians. So thank you for joining us, Powma, and opening the special broadcast with a song. So Powma, please take it away with a song.
Powma Williams, Mina Nia, Nagu Takata, Epia, Emma Williams, Ina, Jason Lopez. Hello, my name is Powma Williams. I'm a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe. I am 8 years old. My mom is Emma Williams. My dad is Jason Lopez. I am the Junior Miss Nevada Indians Powwow Princess. And today I'm going to be singing the Paiute flag song. Dummy pa mana, red, white, and the blue. Ooey doo by as a nugget. Dummy nuggy on the soba. Nada wada. Dummy papa mana, red, white, and the blue. Ooey doo by as a nugget. Dummy nuggy on the soba. Nada wada. Dummy nuggy on the soba. Nada wada. Dummy papa mana, red, white, and the blue. Ooey doo by as a nugget. Dummy nuggy on the soba. Nazi wada. Dummy papa mana, red, white, and the blue. Ooey doo by as a nugget. Dummy nuggy on the soba. Nazi wada. Dummy nuggy on the soba. Nada wada. Dummy papa mana, red, white, and the blue. Ooey doo by as a nugget. Dummy nuggy on the soba. Nada wada. Dummy nuggy on the soba. Nazi wada. Hi, Elaine. Who's at you? You're muted.
Oh, hi, Powma. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us and starting us off today in a good way. So we appreciate you being here and thank you for gifting us with that song.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So today we're here to celebrate National Voter Registration Day, a nonpartisan civic holiday that was first observed in 2012 and has quickly gained momentum ever since. So nearly 3 million voters have registered to vote on this holiday to date. And so we wanted to ensure that Indian Country was a part of that. And we're here to encourage folks from across Indian Country to get informed and get engaged. Did you know that about 34% of eligible American Indians and Alaska Natives are not registered to vote? That's about 1.2 million potential new voters. And so as we know, 2020 is an important year for Indian Country. And to ensure our voice is heard, we must register as the first step and get engaged and participate in the process. So today we have many special guests from around Indian Country to share with us the importance of exercising your voice at the ballot box, finding out how you can take that first step by getting registered to vote, and to share some of the ways that Native vote advocates are getting their communities involved. And you'll also be hearing from other members of NCAI's Civic Engagement team. And so Sandra Mitrovich and Matt Johnson will be joining throughout the broadcast to share the hosting duties today as well, and also share some information on our Native Vote program and how you can participate in National Voter Registration Day. But first, I have the privilege of introducing you to NCAI President Fawn Sharp, who also serves as the president of Quinault Indian Nation and is here to share a few words on Native Vote and why your voice matters. She also serves as our official Native Vote ambassador, and so we are so grateful to have President Sharp here with us. So welcome, President Sharp, and thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Excellent. Auk Yohach, Anshak Highwishka. Good afternoon. My name is Fawn Sharp, and I serve as president not only of my tribe, the Quinault Nation, but the president of the National Congress of American Indians. I am so happy that all of you have joined us today, and I'm so very grateful for that beautiful song and prayer that opened us. That drum beat, as we all know, no matter where we go across Indian country, when we hear that drum, it centers us and it brings us together as one and unifies us in a way that only our spirituality can unify us. And I wanted to make that connection between the drum beat and the remarks that I had in mind for this opening and providing some remarks here. I wanted to talk about having a national soul searching in this moment. We've heard that the soul of the nation is at stake here in this election. And I want you to, just for a minute, remember how you felt the day after the election day in 2016. I want you to do some soul searching right now to think about, what are you feeling? What are the fears, the level of uncertainty, the risks that we're all facing? Every citizen in this country is facing a global pandemic. We are facing impacts of climate change, where the entire West Coast has been on fire and under a cloud of dark smoke, where the eastern seaboard right now is being threatened. And these aren't unusual times. For 6 years in a row, we've had mega fires that are burning the coast. And so while our political landscape is on fire, while our environmental landscape is literally on fire, we have much at stake. And I want you to travel just a little further into the future. Imagine how you might feel 10 years from now, when you look back at the year 2020 and ask yourself, in that moment of so much upheaval in this country, did I do everything I possibly could to effectuate change when change was so desperately needed? And that's the point where we're at today. So I want everyone, as we go through today's programming, to continue to do that soul searching and recognize that while there is so much uncertainty, there are some things that we are absolutely certain about. And that is that the power of this country does not lie in an Oval Office on Pennsylvania Avenue. The power of this country does not lie in the halls of Congress. We have to remember that the real power of this country lies within each and every one of us and our collective voice as a citizenry. And more importantly, for our purposes, tribal nations and the voice of our citizens, we represent a small percentage and a margin, but the value of what we bring to public policy in this day and in this age is so critically important and necessary. We bring traditions, we bring values that are not only proven effective for today, but they've been proven through the ages. They're timeless. They're centuries old solutions to today's challenges. And this country needs us. We need each other. And so I encourage all of you to search deep within your soul about this moment. Embrace those feelings that you have and recognize that the strength and the power lies within each and every one of us. And it is so important that we come together with a unified voice to exercise that voice, because come the day after election, it's going to be all over. And we want to know that we did everything we possibly could to provide our children like Powma, who we just saw, with the future that they so desperately need, and that we owe it to them. We need to honor the ancestors that have gone before us and honor those generations yet to be born. Siakwil.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, President Sharp, for honoring us with those words today. We really appreciate you being here and being such a great advocate for Native Vote and encouraging folks to be able to get out there and exercise their voice. So thank you again. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, wonderful. We are super excited to be here again. As I mentioned, Native Vote is a program that's been a legacy campaign for NCAI. And just to give you a little bit of background, this has been a program that has been a part of NCAI ever since the 1944 inaugural convention of our organization. And so we started off with protecting voting rights in Arizona, New Mexico, and we've been working on this ever since. NCAI has always been, at the forefront of working to protect Native votes, as well as informing folks on their options and what the policy priorities are for Indian country, but also making sure that they understand the process and making sure that they know that every state is different. And so you need to inform yourselves and create a plan in advance of how you can get involved. So that might mean working on developing when you're going to go and vote. Deciding and figuring out which day your states are allowed to, maybe start early voting, for example, and also thinking about where you're going to vote. Are you going to go to a local polling place? Where are the polling locations in your area? And also how you're going to do that. And some folks are looking at doing vote by mail. For others, that's a little bit more difficult. So just looking at those different items and making sure that you understand exactly what is necessary and needed for you to be able to get out there and exercise your voice. So we really appreciate President Sharp being able to join us this morning or this afternoon and getting us started with some of this much needed information and motivation about how to get out there. And so we are getting ready to continue with the program, and we will have a whole slew of special guest speakers to be able to come and join us and share some more words about Native Vote. And so one of the key things that I want to share with everyone here today is that NCAI's civic engagement team is working around the clock. This is one of the first years that we've had a fully dedicated team at NCAI just devoted to the 2020 census as well as the Native Vote Initiative. And so we really encourage you to also join our efforts really and go to nativevote.org, and you can see all of the information that we're providing to Indian country with you. A lot of the work that we do is informed by the communities, and we listen to folks that we're working with on the ground, the grassroots coordinators, all of the folks who are doing this really great work in their communities. And we work together to be able to create resources that will be the most helpful for you all in your efforts to engage your communities. And so one of the key things that I want to share with you all there is that we do have a mini grants program. And so if you're interested in getting out the vote in your communities, getting folks registered, learning how that you can develop your own plan on how to get folks registered to vote, or maybe even navigating that in a virtual environment. I really encourage you to visit our nativevote.org website, as well as National Voter Registration Day.org as well. That's another great resource, and I want to explain a little bit about our partnership with them. So NCAI this year is a national partner for National Voter Registration Day, and part of that involves being able to get a whole bunch of resources, toolkits, communications plans, all of these different things together, learning how to do digital organizing. All of these things are part of the National Voter Registration Day packet when you sign on to become a partner as well. And so you can learn how to engage your communities by visiting that website, becoming a partner. You can also register to vote while you're on that page as well. And so we really encourage you to take a look there, take a look at our nativevote.org website, and learn how we can kind of come together and blend those two different groups of resources, some that are very specific to Indian country and some just to help you engage your communities no matter where you live, and encourage folks to get out there and get registered. and make sure that you can vote. And so that is one of the key things that I wanted to share with you all today. We are waiting for one of our speakers. And so the next thing I think we want to jump to is if we could bring our Civic Engagement Associates, Matt and Sandra, on screen. And I wanted to introduce you all to our other hosts for the day. So welcome, Matt and Sandra. It's so great to see you all. I just wanted to have a moment to introduce you all to the audience and tell them a little bit about our work in Need a Vote and what we've got coming up soon.
I'll go first. Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Johnson. I am one of the Civic Engagement Associates here at NCAI, working with Sandra and Yawna on Need a Vote. And it is something that we all are extremely excited about. As President Sharp said, this is a big election, and it has even greater implications than just who's going to be our next president and who's going to be controlling the House and the Senate, but it's also going to determine who is in charge of your school board, who is your local sheriff or your local mayor. And these people have even greater impact than the president does because they're on the local level there. And that's something that people kind of forget about, especially in presidential years. So we want to really encourage folks to make sure that you're paying attention to your local races as well. With that, I'll stop and throw it to Sandra now, so she has her turn to speak.
Hello, hey Tanani, Nikki Amsa, Sandra Mitrovich. I'm a citizen of the Tai Maidu in Northern California and descendant of the Amani Maidu. It has been a pleasure to be with the National Congress of American Indians, first as a William Mankiller Fellow and understanding what that means. I know many of you know who William Mankiller was, but to be able to lead underneath that name and hopefully do that some honor with civic engagement. And then also then to become a part of NCI staff as civic engagement associate. It has just been phenomenal to see not only the organizing that has gone on this year in Indian country, but to also, I really want to really stress that the coordinators, the organizations, everyone that's doing this work, we thank you. We thank you for all of those that have had to transition in a time where it's been really challenging. Our Vice President, Licia Maddox, had mentioned earlier in a conversation we had that we have tribal leaders that are, they're facing wildfires and hurricanes, and they're still trying to do civic engagement work while they have these things coming into their communities. So if that doesn't tell you anything about the resiliency that all of our communities definitely have and the work that we do, I don't know what does. So such an honor to be a part of this team, do this work for all of you.
Wonderful. Yeah, so we are able to join with our next speaker. I believe we'll be having Ruth Buffalo join us. And so we want to be able to share with you a little bit about Ruth. Ruth is not only an educator, community organizer, and public health professional, but she also made history in 2018, serving the people of North Dakota as well. And so we want to bring Ruth on stage and take it away, Ruth. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
Yes, Mazagirads, thank you. It's an honor to be here with you and to share a few words. This is such a huge election. I'm sure I don't have to tell you the importance of it, but in case, this is the election of our lifetime, I believe. And so we have so much work that needs to be done, and the work does not end on election day, but we still need to make sure that we show up and participate in this election. We need to start having these conversations within our households, within our communities, start talking to our cousins, our aunts, our aunties and uncles, and getting a plan in place to vote. I ran for office for the first time in 2016 in a statewide race for insurance commissioner. And even though I didn't win that race in 2016, I was left feeling so inspired because a lot of my older first cousins came out and voted for the very first time. And so we need to really show up. There's so much at stake. Our tribal sovereignty has been on the chopping block within this administration, and it's nothing new that we haven't faced before. But again, our voice truly is our vote. our voice, our vote is our voice. And I really want to echo the words of Congresswoman Deb Haaland, that voting is sacred. This is a big responsibility that each of us has, but we can do it. We can step up and vote. North Dakota is unique in that we don't have a voter registration requirement, but there are still challenges that our rural tribal communities are facing. And so we're really encouraging our relatives throughout Indian country to vote early and to vote safely. And really vote for the candidates that are going to protect our future generations. It's so important that we bring our values to the ballot box. And across Indian country, we know that our children and families are our top priority. And so we need to continue building upon the work that was done in previous years. And again, just show up. We really need to show up in this election. Do your homework on the candidates. And, with that, I want to say how important it is to not only vote in this presidential election, but also vote in your local elections. Those really make a difference. City council, city commission, county commission, state legislative seats, all make a huge difference in driving policy changes forward for all people. Myself, in 2018, I ran for the legislative seat that I now hold in District 27 in South Fargo, and I knocked every door within my district. There's about 15,000 people in my district, and I won by only about 135 votes. So every vote really does matter, and I just want to encourage you to talk to your relatives, get a plan in place. If you're unsure, North Dakota has such a different landscape with our tribal nations. Fort Berthold Indian Reservation, which is the headquarters for the Mandan, Hidalgo, and Rickraw Nation, we have 6 different counties that intersect Fort Berthold Indian Reservation. So that means we have to contact 6 different county auditors to make sure we have a plan in place, to make sure that we know if there's a ballot drop box that's going to be available within our precinct. And also check to see if you can get a ballot to mail in, which is a safer way to go. But we also face challenges in our rural communities. So again, vote early, vote safe, and vote for the candidates that are going to really put your values front and center. And I believe across Indian country, our children and families are our top priority. And so again, back to the county auditors, make sure you're doing your homework and having these conversations. Every state has a Secretary of State's office that has voting information on there. So you could do a simple Google and do a quick search for Secretary of State and then also county auditors. It's so important that we show up, but we also have to do our part in doing the research, doing our homework, and having these conversations within your household. So I just want to say, Madzigidads, thank you so much for allowing me to share a few words at this time. And I look forward to hearing so many more stories to come about first-time voters that have made it to the ballot box. So Madzigidads, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth Buffalo. Your words are always inspiring and motivating, and just thank you so much for your time. Gwennon. Wow, such a great group of guests so far, and we have more to come. So next we want to welcome our guest from Las Vegas, Nevada. Barbara Hartzell is from the Las Vegas Indian Center. She's Chemehuevi Paiute from Nevada and sits on the board of the Nevada Voter Alliance Network. Also works in partnership with the Las Vegas Indian Center on implementing a Get Out the Vote plan of action, including text banking, phone banking, and much more. We're so excited to welcome her today and learn a little bit more about their mission and what they have going on in Nevada. So welcome, Barb. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really happy to be here and talking about what we're doing here in Las Vegas when it comes to the native vote.
Fantastic. Well, first and foremost, can you tell us a little bit about NVAN and the work that you've been doing thus far?
So with NVAN, it's the Native Voters Alliance Nevada. It's a recently created a C4 program here for the statewide Native representation. I sit as an advisory circle member. This process took about a year to get buy-in and get the community, and now running program with all of that. And it's amazing to see what we're going to do this electoral cycle. And also with the Las Vegas Indian Center, I'm the chair. And we're also running our civic engagement programs. Today, actually, we have our national voter registration event at the Las Vegas Indian Center. So you could go down there if you are in Las Vegas. They're raffling off prizes, gift cards, masks, and all of that stuff. And you could get yourself counted for the census as well as register to vote.
Fantastic. And one of the things that we heard is that you're also hiring folks. We know that that's one of the things we saw with Poll Worker Recruitment Day. And how is that process going for you? And if we can definitely elevate that today, we would love to. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Absolutely. So the Las Vegas Indian Center has partnered with United Natives, and it's a Native youth civic engagement mentorship. And so we're looking for college students who will come out and help with relational organizing to get out the vote. And they could especially mask up for the ballot. We have mail ballots here in Nevada. And so they'll learn all about the election process and explaining all the way from like, how do you register to vote, what to expect with the ballot, can you drop them off, can you vote in person, and all of the pieces that go along with that. And so you could go to unitednatives.org. And also we have, of course, on our social media, Las Vegas Indian Center on Facebook. And we have the emails for you to reach out if you're interested in any of those positions.
It sounds like a lot of really great stuff going on in more ways than one. Last but not least, I know that some of the work definitely we've talked about already early in the show is also about how to engage youth. And so I wanted to give you the last couple of moments to talk about, you know, how do we engage those youth? We know that that's one of our largest population of voters that we want to hear from. So what are some definitely some highlights or tactics that we need to be working on to engage our youth?
I definitely think when it comes to our youth, we need to meet them where they're at. And there's this line of cross respect with each other. Like, they live in a different time. They have different access to different things. And how do we communicate that across as well? I grew up raised by my grandma in a very traditional household. And so it was very like ingrained into me of like, you respect your elders, you follow protocol, you don't step out of line, you don't question anything in those senses. But now we have a whole nother generation that necessarily aren't growing up with those same values and those same things. And so where do we meet them? I have an 18-year-old son. He plays video games all day and goes to high school online. So how do I get him involved in getting out to vote? And it's honestly bringing in those actual values that my grandmother taught me of like sitting across and saying, listen, son, you're literally one generation away from an outhouse. You're literally one generation away from not being allowed off of a reservation. You're literally only one generation away from a census determining whether you got funding or whether it was a way to track you down. And so really explaining like how we were raised and how we grew up from my grandmother and grandfather's stories, and then bringing it into this time and really expressing the importance of it, of like, yes, you know, I learned about voting, not even in voting in for an election outside of my tribe. That's where I learned about electoral work. That's how I learned that if you wanted to run for council, if you wanted to change your bylaws and constitutions, that there were all these protocols. And so really taking like our traditional routes and how we carry ourselves and what is important to us, and being able to invest that in our youth and meeting them where they're at and letting them really understand that like, just because it seems so big and so massive, or maybe it doesn't seem important at all, it really does determine a lot of things. And like, it really determines just how far we've come from just our grandmothers and mothers' generations to where we'll go with their next generations.
Thank you so much, Barb, for joining us today. You've given us a ton of information in a very short amount of time, so we really appreciate you taking the time. We know you're busy and doing all the work that you're doing in Nevada. So again, thank you, Wenin, to your organizations, your advocacy, and all your great words today. And we look forward to visiting with you in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
So before we introduce our next guests, We are excited to show you a video about an important project that Progressive Leadership Alliance in Nevada is working on to help get out the vote. If you have any difficulty hearing the video, we hope you don't, but if you experience any delays or anything, be sure that we will be posting this recording later on our NCAI YouTube page. So please, without hesitation, play the video.
Me, Amber Torres, Minania na Agarikata Poinabi na Agagwe. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amber Torres. I'm the chairman for the Walker River Paiute Tribe in Shores, Nevada. During these untrying times, we want to make sure that your voice is heard and your vote matters. Get out, place your vote, and understand the importance of making it count. You will find these QR codes located all around the reservation. These are for voter registration. This should take you less than 2 to 5 minutes to get registered. You will scan the picture and you will fill out your information, and you need to make sure to have your Nevada driver's license on hand.
Super easy. Together, me Monday. You mean vote. Good.
Hi, my name is Alexia M, and I'm a member of the Walker River Paiute Tribe. And I'm a first-time voter this year, and just this morning I went to the link and registered to vote, and I think it's very important that all of us youngsters get in there and get our voice heard.
Yeshi nu Priscilla na niafa yang gara kara waita nu kimawana. Yeshi isha bishara mi maniku yeshi vote yeshi mo numo yarona wana pisha.
Thank you so much for playing that video. We are so excited at this time to bring up our next guests who are responsible for putting together such a wonderful video and helping ensure that our voters get registered. So we'd like to welcome Laura Martin and Beverly Harry from the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. Laura Martin is the Executive Director of the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, or otherwise known as Plan Action, a statewide organization founded by Nevada activists in 1994 to improve the lives of marginalized communities by promoting leadership, social justice, and fairness. Plan Action's electoral programs focus on communities of color, including tribal areas in rural Nevada, and ensuring that they have access to the vote at both Washoe and Clark counties. Laura is also a board member of People's Action and the Western States Center. Beverly Harry is Diné and works as the Native Community Organizer for Plan. She continually works at Plan to broadcast the Native voice throughout all communities to build and enhance civil rights movement, self-empowerment, mining, and environmental justice, and healing from historical trauma. First and foremost, I'd like to ask Laura if she could please share with us a little bit about the mission of Plan in Nevada and just some of the work in voting you've done in partnership with communities.
Sure. Thank you all for having us. I'm definitely honored to be here, part of this live stream. Like you said, Plan was founded in 1994 to build a more fair and just Nevada that puts people and planet first. And we do that by organizing with frontline communities and directly impacted leaders. And of course, we want to invest in communities and fight for policy changes that actually improve people's lives. Plan was founded in part by tribal members, and as well as labor leaders, LGBTQ members, immigration communities, women's rights activists, environmentalists, and everyone else who finds themselves on the losing side of corporate greed and attacks on our democracy. Our partnerships with Nevada's tribes are critical to our work from civic engagement and especially environmental justice. And we're definitely proud to ensure that tribal outreach is part of our civic engagement statewide. We've produced not only these videos, but we've also produced films to talk about the environment. During normal times, we do a lot of visits out to different tribes to really connect those rural parts of our states to the urban cores of Clark County and Washoe. And we just know that, the saying goes, those closest to the pain are closest to the solution. It's just important for us to really be connected to people all over the state the best ways that we can. And we're really lucky to be able to work with Beverly Harry and the Harry family, who has shown leadership and really inspired us to ensure to stay true to our values of really centering the people who are at the front lines of some of these issues that we organize around.
Thank you so much, Laura. I definitely have had an opportunity to work with Plan. I just thank you so much for all your advocacy and work. Beverly, as a Native community organizer, I can't say enough about the work that you and your family do to elevate this message across the country, really. I know you're working to elevate the visibility and voice of Native people across Nevada, but I know that that extends even further. I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about your experience, some of your stories as it relates to this project, and where you kind of envision this going. And I know you have a beautiful story to share with us today about it. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Sandra, Laura. It's really, really great to see you. And, here I am right at Pyramid Lake. So good afternoon to all of the natives on the prairies, the tundra, the mesas, and the people around, among the cacti and the pine nut trees. We want to welcome you to this virtual call and hope you will bring new inspiration to voter registration. There is a need to work with our Native communities. We need to physically distance during this time of COVID-19. Today, we are braiding technology with civic engagement. Therefore, in this unique attempt to expand voter registration, we can safely provide QR scan codes. And now the QR codes stand for quick response and have been developed for high-speed reading picked up by cell phones. So just to provide everyone on the call about the background of the history of tribes in Nevada, more than 7 tribes are actively developing polling site locations on the reservation. This includes access to early voting. And so we've, accomplished a whole lot with the tribes here. Now, the precedent began with 3 strong tribal leaders who filed suit on behalf of the tribes and began the pursuit of justice against the Secretary of State in Nevada for voter disenfranchisement. Through this effort, the tribes prevailed, setting up some very important legislation which will help bring new meaning to voting on reservations. PLAN was pretty intuitive, and PLAN is the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, was pretty intuitive to assist tribes in many different ways to jumpstart traditional voting. Using traditional angles, we have found that tribes have an amazing voice, and we need to know how to use this a whole lot better. So I will tell you the story that inspired my idea of the QR codes. So just 6 weeks ago, my partner of 32 years passed into the spirit world. In trying to develop a beautiful and safe drive-by, pay your last respect procession, we designed a path for the procession, including a safety booth and signs that strongly advise safe distancing, mandatory mask and hand sanitizer to combat COVID-19 impacts. So in addition, my daughter, Autumn, and I blew up like about 10 full-size posters of my husband in chronological order from infant to his elder years. Through this procession, relatives were able to pass by the willow and cotton arbor to send off prayers with him. After passing the arbor, 2 QR posters were developed for the link for voter registration. Now, my husband had been a huge part of the effort with civic engagement here on the Pyramid Lake Reservation. And so we continuously work with PLAN. Norm Harry, my husband, was a volunteer. You grabbed him any place you needed him, and he was there. And so that voter registration idea came from his passing. And the link, people that drove by could pick up that link from the phone, go and register to vote. And then on the other side was another QR code, which led them to the video that began of the 2-minute video where he was singing and working on his civic engagement with Autumn and the rest of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe. So that video was really instrumental in helping us convey the need for traditional messages during this time, you know, when all of us were hurting, but also to soothe his relatives that really needed to hear his voice again. So the video was created by Kit Miller. She's an activist that was carrying the work of Maya Miller's work here in Nevada. So the QR video that we showed you was offered to provide a solution during COVID-19. We contacted tribal leaders to promote the work with like on the ground to push civic engagement, and we began focusing on goals like 100% voter registration, engaging elders, utilizing our language, which is so powerful, and then using the presence of sage, seagrass, and all of these other things, and also focusing on first-time voters. So Laura, Plan's executive director, is the woman behind the curtain, you know, making sure that everything was implemented for the work we're doing here with Norm, and so I really am grateful for the way we were able to relate the voter registration effort on behalf of my husband, and also the great work that he did with his drumming, with his traditional knowledge and civic engagement. So Laura Martin was behind the scenes. Thank you so much.
Thank you both for joining us today. I know it's such a short amount of time, and we have so many things to share. And if I could encourage one thing from the audience, definitely visit Plan Action. You know, reach out to Laura and Beverly about this wonderful project. I can't say enough about it. It's a great model to follow. I know Beverly and Laura both, they would be open to sharing that information. They've already expressed that to our team. And then also the video of Norm Harry, we've asked Beverly if we can definitely share that. He definitely was an inspirational leader to myself, always came when I asked for any of our events. And so many thanks to the Harry family for sharing such a beautiful soul with us. So thank you both today. Thank you for your work and your advocacy. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Again, such wonderful guests and all the work that's going on across the country. We have a wonderful guest joining us now. And as we talk about leaders of past and present and future, we're so excited to welcome our next speaker. Our next speaker is Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. from the Cherokee Nation. Chief Hoskin Jr. was elected to serve as the Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation in 2019. Prior to being elected Principal Chief, he served as the Cherokee Nation Secretary of State. Thank you for joining us, Chief Hoskin. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Sandra. And I appreciate the National Congress of American Indians and President Sharp for undertaking this important effort. I think every election you hear those of us in public office say is the most important election in history or the most important in generations. But that's true, certainly, of the 2020 election. And I mean top to bottom, local to presidential. It's so important for Indian country to be engaged. Earlier this morning, the Deputy Chief and I, Brian Warner, signed a proclamation declaring it Voter Registration Day in the Cherokee Nation, consistent with the National Voter Registration Day. We want to get our numbers up in Cherokee country, and we need to get them up all over Indian country because there are strength in numbers. That's true today. It was true in our past, and it'll sure be true in our future. At Cherokee Nation, we have been about the business of trying to raise our voices through registering people to vote for some time. In 2013, we launched something called Cherokee Vote. We go out to the communities. We make sure we get as many of our citizens registered to vote as possible. Some 13,000 Cherokees are registered as a result of those efforts, and that's important. It takes on a lot of importance during a presidential year, but people should also understand that what happens at the local level and what happens at the state level is also very important. So what I like to share with Cherokees is that in Oklahoma, our current governor won by less than 150,000 votes. There are 370,000 Native Americans in Oklahoma. And if you just carved out the voting age population, that is a significant voting block. And so Oklahoma is one of those states where the leadership at the top has presented some great challenges for the tribes. And so I think that Cherokees in our state ought to be, we don't have the governor on the ballot this year, but they ought to be waking up more and more to the idea that their vote not only matters in the broad sense, but that really can matter in terms of the elections that take place in Oklahoma. And you can take that across the country, and you can find plenty of legislative districts, plenty of city councils, and significantly this year, plenty of states where it will be a swing state where Native votes can make a difference, and they ought to make a difference. So I'm pleased at where we are in Indian country, mindful that we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us. And that's one of the things I admire about NCAI and a lot of the leaders across Indian country is we're identifying those barriers to voting. And they're there in much of Indian country, difficulties getting to the polling place, difficulties having a polling place within reach, other obstacles to voting. Even mail ballot voting can be an obstacle for some parts of Indian country. What I like to share with our Cherokees here in Cherokee Nation is that we're fortunate in that we have relatively fewer of those barriers. That means we need to be voting in high numbers. That means we need to relish this opportunity to get out and vote. So we try to consistently send that message. And ultimately what that will mean is whether we have a voice that's respected by those who make policy in this country. Now, we ought to be respected anyway. I mean, tribes in this country were here before there was a United States. And we ought to be respected on that basis alone. But we know that in the American political system that many things talk, and numbers are one of the things that talk. And so that's the reason we've got to be out in large numbers. It helps when Indian country votes that the president of NCAI can go to Congress and advocate for things like Federal CARES Act money during this pandemic. It helps the chief of the Cherokee Nation if our people are out voting when we go to advocate for resources for Indian country. And so I can't impress upon the folks in the audience enough how important it is that we vote and that we all undertake some individual responsibility to try to help our fellow tribal citizen go register to vote, because I suspect that most folks on this that are in the audience are fairly engaged. And so the issue is, what are we going to do to make a difference? Did we get a friend or neighbor registered? Did we take an elder to vote? Did we think about the way COVID impacts voter turnout and try to find a way to safely get people to engage in mail balloting if they can do that? Those are the kind of things that people in the audience today ought to do, the things that I ought to do to make a difference for the future of Indian country. So we've got a lot of challenges. They're challenges that can be resolved in our favor if we get out in numbers. And let's think about what's happening lately. We've scored some significant wins in front of the United States Supreme Court and other courts. We've made some advances in Congress, but we know our history, and we know that Congress and other governments in this country can take away those wins. And often there is kind of a boomerang effect. The greatest hedge against that is for us to be out in strong numbers this year voting. And lastly, I'll say this. I feel like we're in a position in the country where this country, broader than Indian country, needs a dose of democratic activism, needs people out voting. I think we're at a point in this country where we need leaders that are more responsive to the needs of people in this country. There is plenty of wealth and resources in this country, for example, to take on the COVID pandemic better than we've done. There's plenty of expertise in this country that ought to be brought to bear to address COVID-19. That's just the challenge we're facing today. Imagine what we're going to be facing in the years to come, from climate change to a changing economy. That affects every single one of us. We need more democracy in this country, and Indian country ought to be leading the way. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I appreciate being a part of this. It's so important.
Thank you, Chief. You know, I know there was at least one audience question we had here, which is, how do you keep voting polls safe? Not simply for the health benefits, but also for any kind of voter intimidation or something, where an environment where it seems like there's some kind of intimidation going on from one side or both sides.
Well, I think we, number one, need to be vigilant. And it's something that we've not undertaken at Cherokee Nation, but perhaps we ought to, is to make sure voters know who they can call if they feel like their access to a polling place has been prevented, or there's some intimidation going on. Or there's other organizations out there doing it, and I suspect NCAI is doing it. But perhaps on the more local level, we could be a resource for that, because we know in places in the country that it happens. If it happens once, it's too much. Disenfranchising voters is undemocratic, but it's often the way campaigns are waged. And I think we need to be a protection against that.
Couldn't agree with you more, Chief. And, with that, I'll say thank you so much for joining us today. You had some amazing insight, and we really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to join us here on our broadcast.
All right. My pleasure. Whatever.
Thank you very much. Well, hello, everybody. It's Matt Johnson again, one of the Civic Engagement Associates. We're going to jump right into our next person. Just because I know we're running over a little time here. Our next presenter is Devero Yellow Earring, who is the field director for North Dakota Native Vote, and he's going to give us some insight on the work that he does. Devero, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours. And don't forget to unmute yourself. All right.
Hello. Yep. Thank you. Yep. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me on the live broadcast today, and thank you to all those who are tuning in around the world. Again, my name is Devero Yellow Earring. I come from the Cheyenne River Lakota Nation out of north central South Dakota. I currently serve as the field director at North Dakota Native Vote. I am responsible for all of our field operations throughout the state. Our biggest focus areas are the reservation communities. We are working in 4 reservations in North Dakota. We also have a focus on the urban Native populations throughout the state. So we have a significant urban Native population that we also try to engage with in North Dakota. Just a quick background on North Dakota Native Vote. North Dakota Native Vote was founded in 2018 in response to a voter identification law. The voter identification law has the ability to disenfranchise thousands of tribal voters, more specifically those who live on the reservation. So as a result of the 2018 midterm election, a lot of organizations and volunteers rallied together to increase the voter turnout for the 2018 midterm election, and we were able to double the previous midterm election numbers. So using that momentum in 2018 and building off of that energy and that rally of people to respond to this voter identification law, we are now a fully fledged, fully operational nonprofit organization that focuses on civic engagement. So, and it, as they mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, this is National Voter Registration Day. We are a little different in North Dakota. We don't have an actual voter registration. The voter identification law that I mentioned, voters who live or reside in North Dakota are required to have a physical address or a residential address listed on their identification cards. So if you do not have a updated or verified physical address, you will not be eligible to vote. So think about that as I go through a little bit about the work that we're doing. A lot of our communities that we work with don't have physical addresses or residential addresses on the reservation. A lot of the families use a post office box on their identification cards. That's how they get mail, and that's how they do a lot of their communicating is through mail. So that's another barrier to this law, is trying to get their addresses verified and also get their identification updated. So we work countless time and energy to make sure that people are eligible to vote here in North Dakota. Of course, with the onset of the global COVID-19 pandemic, all of our existing social disparities have been magnified. So there's socioeconomic issues that we face on the reservations in some of these communities. So something to think about when you are doing a voting. If you want to vote in North Dakota and you're living on the reservation, these are very rural rural communities, and sometimes there's limited access to cast your ballot. For example, we have a county auditor or a ballot drop box that's 40 miles away from a community that has eligible voters. And so trying to navigate through some of those barriers, trying to figure out if we can increase access and request more access to ballot drop boxes. There's a few polling sites that are going to be open for the upcoming general election. We're trying to make sure that proper protocols are in place to keep people safe. And again, going back to the ruralness and accessibility, where are these polling places located? Where are these ballot drop boxes located? And trying to educate all of our voters on that information and make that available to them. So we believe that elections should be fair, equal, and accessible for all. So these barriers can be very taxing. Voters will have to drive to a post office if they want to do mail-in ballots. Sometimes they don't have postage available or can't pay for postage, which could be taxing. And just your vehicle and gas money in general could also be taxing for voters. So it's our job at North Dakota Native Vote to help educate and navigate these systems of voting in North Dakota. And lastly, just want to share a little bit about the work that we're doing. We launched a Pledge to Vote campaign. We are doing a online Pledge to Vote campaign with the pandemic going on. We want to connect with people virtually. You can visit our website for more information on pledging to vote. We also have a text to vote, or pledge to vote via text. You can text the number 22828, text pledge to vote to 22828, and you can sign up to get our mailing list and stay engaged with voting in North Dakota. And of course, we will continue to educate all of our Native voters, both on the reservation and in urban communities, to build their confidence in navigating these voting systems in North Dakota. So again, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity to share some of our work, and I look forward to getting out the vote.
Well, thank you, Devero, and appreciate all the information you gave to us. It's hard out there, and you guys are doing the hard work every single day, so we truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. So to finish off our broadcast, I'm actually going to share my screen real quick and show just a little information, because we've been talking about how important it is to register to vote, but we haven't talked about how exactly do you do it, because, you know, it's simple, but let's face it, if it was that simple, everyone would be able to do it. So let me just share my screen very quickly for everybody. So everyone should see here, and I'm going to double check before I jump on. Yep, excellent. So let's go to our first slide here. So registering to vote. So as has been mentioned, not only by Devero, but also by Ruth Buffalo, North Dakota is the only state that doesn't require registration for vote. For every other state in the union, if you want to vote, you have to register, and you have to prove a couple of things. So, you know, depending on where you live, you can register to vote either online, by mail, or in person. Now, you want to check your local election boards or your state's Secretary of State website. Most states, their Secretary of State is the one that administers or at least runs elections in the state. So you can find out the deadlines of, you know, when can you register by and where to go to register. Native Vote has actually partnered with Rock the Vote, and we created our own registration portal, which is on our website. Here's a screen. You can see a little screenshot there, and then below is the link that you can go on to do that as well. And we have another link. I know that should probably will pop up for our work with the National Voter Registration Day. So what do you need to register? So every state requirement is different. So some states you may require a photo ID, or you might be required to bring a birth certificate or a social security. But the basic things that you're going to need is something to prove that A, you live in the state. If you don't live in the state, you can't vote. Second, you got to prove that you're over the age of 18, or that you will be 18 by election day, because obviously that's the law as well. And then depending on some states, they might ask you to have proof of citizenship. Now, tribal IDs, again, depending on the state, are considered acceptable forms of identification for you to register. The best thing for you to do, of course, is to check your state's Secretary of State or Election Board's website for what is acceptable items and what you can register with. Now, how long do you have to register? So deadlines for registering vary from state to state. As you can see in the picture here, almost all of them are, or basically all of them are in October. So we have about a week before we hit October. So at that point, voter registration deadlines are going to start. Now, there are 21 states and the District of Columbia that allow same-day voter registration on election day, meaning on election day, you could show up at a polling place, sign up to register, and then vote that same day. However, we don't want you to wait until then because we all know with COVID and everything going on, you may not be able to get to the polls on election day. So you want to make sure that you're registered well before that. And just as a quick, you can see how the power of the native vote, we've talked about it a lot. The different numbers you see on there are percentages compared to population. So, for example, in Arizona, 6% of the state's population is native, and that's around 309,000 voters. And it varies from state to state, but these numbers are huge and can be the difference maker, especially in some of these swing states. Arizona, as we know, is a swing state. Colorado has a Senate race. Montana has a Senate, a governor, and a congressional race as well. Alaska's got a competitive race. There are so many places where native vote turnout could be the biggest difference. And so we are definitely encouraging folks to do that, especially because there's a large population that is unregistered. And especially there's a lot of young folks as well. 1.2 million are not registered to vote, which is roughly 34%. And that's huge, especially because that's a lot of native youth out there that we have to get engaged and get them voting not only now, but every year after, because once you start voting, you don't want to stop. Now, it helps determine not only representation in Congress, but it's really important for issues like energy, gaming, education, water, environmental impact, budgeting, spending. There's so many issues. And then even this year, because whoever is in charge in the state, both governor and the state legislative, is going to be determining how the new congressional seatings are charged, as well as state legislatures. So the last thing you want is for a state legislature to cut your reservation or cut your community in half. That helps dilute your power as a voting bloc. So you want to make sure that you do that. Now, as we all know, the pandemic has really kind of changed how people are planning to vote. So for those who are thinking of going to mail-in vote, before the pandemic, there were only 5 states that had automatic mail-in voting, meaning that every registered voter would receive a ballot whether or not they requested it. Since the pandemic, 4 states in DC have temporarily, or for this election cycle, are going to be sending out automatic mail-in ballots. And then 17 states have put in temporary automatic applications, meaning instead of getting a ballot, you will be given an application for which you can then decide, I want to fill this out, and then you should receive a mail-in ballot, or you don't have to fill it out, and then you can go vote on election day, or if your state has early voting, you can do that as well. So last thing here, every native vote counts. And then, of course, thank you so much for joining us. Now, let me just real quick jump back on here. And there was a question about the Postal Service and how it's affecting not only rural areas, but then can we trust the Postal Service to count our vote? So the Postal Service has made it a priority to put ballots first, making sure that ballots are getting in as quickly as possible. But we don't want you to wait if you are worried about it, especially because, first of all, you need to make sure you're registered. Then if you're registered, you got to request that ballot. Depending on some of the states, you might get the ballot. But then if you're not comfortable or you're not sure if the post office is going to get it there on time for you, a lot of states, as Devero mentioned, have ballot drop boxes, places where you can drop off the ballot, or you can take it to a local polling state. I mean, again, it depends on the state. There's a lot of information that's going to vary on the state that you live in. So I would just say that educate yourself, go to your Secretary of States or your local election boards to find out what you need to register, where you can go to vote, where you can get a ballot, where you can drop off a ballot, all these things to ensure that your vote is counted on November 3rd. So that actually kind of brings us to the end of the presentation. I'm going to ask if my colleagues, Sandra and Yawna, could join us back up on here, and there they are. Hey, Yawna, I think you're still muted. There we go.
We're good. We're good.
Well, I'll just ask parting words. I'll start with Yawna. Just anything you'd like to say to folks before we jump off today.
Sure, yes. So I'm so excited that we were able to feature today as National Voter Registration Day. And I just really want to put a call to action out there for folks to, take some of the information you've heard today and really think about, what your vote means to you. And really, again, I can't emphasize enough that we need to plan early. So we have about 40 days or so until election day. So that sounds like a lot of time, but it really isn't. So if you can start thinking about your action plan today, think about the things that matter to you, write them all down and do a little bit of research. We're happy to help you with that plan or finding resources, so deadlines for your particular state. I know right now there are a couple of different states and areas that are actually able to vote early. So election day isn't just on November 3rd for some folks. Some people are able to vote now. And so we want to make sure that you have all of the resources that you need to be able to exercise your vote and your voice. So definitely reach out to us. Our civic engagement team here is, on standby to help you all develop those plans, help provide some resources and guidance. I want to encourage you also to join our collection and network of folks who do this work in Indian country every day. And so I'll encourage you to join as a Native Vote Coordinator. There's information on our website about what that entails, but we support all of your efforts for that. Again, we have many grants available for our Native Vote outreach and efforts. So if you're a tribal nation or organization is looking for some support, we're here to help provide that. So I definitely encourage you to submit an application for that. And I just wanted to share one thing that I think it's important, and I hope both of you as well will share that. But I know for myself, I vote because, I really think it's important that the folks that we're electing today will really have an impact on our generations of tomorrow. And so that's why I take it upon myself to make sure that I get registered, that I know what issues are important to me and my family back home in Oklahoma, and make sure that I get myself there, whether it's physically in person, by absentee, or by mail, just to make sure that I make that happen. And so thank you for sharing the floor, and I'll pass it on to Sandra.
Thank you so much, Yawna. Again, I said it before, I'll say it again. It's a pleasure to be a part of such a wonderful team doing wonderful work. But we are part of a larger team. We're a part of a team across the country that's doing this work. And please, if I can encourage you today, take the time, take all the information that you saw or that you heard, I should say, here today, and also read probably throughout the chat. Go and visit some of the websites that have been shared, view some of the videos, but I would also encourage you, there are a lot of other events going on today across Indian country. Your coordinators are doing wonderful work, and they are trying to really get those messages out there and do this work. So please join the other broadcasts that are going on throughout the day. I know NCAI has been sharing them on their Facebook page. Other National Native partners are sharing those wonderful events. Please support our relatives. Make sure that also in being a good relative, that you also get your family to ensure that they are registered to vote. Talk a little bit about that. I've heard that time and time again. People have said to me, you know what, Sandra, this is probably the first year I'm really going to be voting. Or I've heard from first-time voters that are going to be voting for the first time. So if you have a first-time voter, or if you have someone who is going to be voting for the first time, just in general, please encourage them, try and find resources to ensure that they get their ballot submitted and definitely get registered to vote. So again, thank you all for sharing so much today. Our civic engagement team, I can't say enough. We love this work and we love working with all of you.
Yes, I would agree, Sandra. Thank you so much. I'll just say for myself, getting out there and voting is something that is really important. It exercises, it's a way for me to speak. I'm not obviously on a high level here, but it's nice to say yeah, I voted for this person, and this person, because of that, they made this change, or they supported an issue that is really important to me. And that's what it is. You want to have people that are going to support you. And we said it before, and I'll say it again. Local elections are extremely key. I know that with everything happening with the presidential race, your focus is really there, but the local education boards, your local sheriffs, your local district attorneys, mayors, town councils, city councils, county councils, those guys affect your life a lot more. I know for a fact, like, stuff gets passed, new ordinances, taxes, stuff like that. A lot of that happens on the local level. So pay attention to those local races, and because that's where you can have not only a greater effect, but then if you want to run, you can run yourself for that. So with that, I will just say thank you again, everybody, for joining us. All of our amazing guests, from President Sharp, Chief Haskins, Devero, Bev, Barb, Laura. I feel like I'm forgetting everybody, but just thank you so much, every single one of you, for joining us today.
Yes, it was a fantastic event, and thank you all so much. So for all of you audience members out there watching, on behalf of myself, our team here in Civic Engagement and in CAI, thank you for joining us. Get registered to vote, and visit us at nativevote.org. So with that, we'll say goodbye until next week in our regular Taking Action in 2020 on Thursdays, 3 p.m. on Eastern Time on NCAI's Facebook page. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.